Anecdote versus science. Some people make a clear distinction, but we need to think about that more clearly and fully and deeply. Some people say anecdotes should be dismissed, and science is something special and different, but it ain't, as witnessed the fact that some people report something as science and a lot of people believe it, even scientists, but then they find out evidence was tampered with, it's fake and all this stuff. Why? If there's some precious thing called science that's not an anecdote, then why does this occur? And besides, does science have to do with experience or not? Is it a reporting of experience, or is it something different? Well, it is not different. As Leonardo da Vinci said, for example. Now, I disagree with this first part about math and science, but it was at his time and it's different. Psychology is a science, no math. Philosophy is a science, no math. Math is a science, math, some things like that. There can be some sciences with limited math in them. Physics must have math, chemistry must have math, but, quote, there's no human experience that can be termed true science unless it can be mathematically demonstrated. And if thou sayest that the sciences which begin and end in the mind are true, this cannot be conceded, but must be denied for many reasons. And firstly, because in such mental discourses, experience is eliminated, and without experience, there can be no certainty. Leonardo da Vinci from Thoughts on Life, from what I've seen. Galileo, quote, I should even think that in making the celestial material alterable, unquote, stuff in the heavens, it's the same as on earth, it can change. Quote, I should even think that in making the celestial material alterable, I contradict the doctrine of Aristotle much less than do those people who still want to keep the sky inalterable. For I am sure that he never took its inalterability to be as certain as the fact that all human reasoning must be placed second to direct experience, unquote. From second letter of Galileo Galilei to Mark Welser on Sunspots, page 18 of my edition of Discoveries and Opinions of Galileo, translated by Stillman, copyright 1957. I will put a link to this in the description field. But we have experience wrapped up in science. That is what it is about. Without experience, no science. And what happens in it besides? It is a bunch of anecdotes. The difference is it is a systematic, logical use of collected anecdotes. It is not any different. You take away the anecdote, you ain't got any science. Because what is it? A report. One day, after driving to the lab, getting some Starbucks on the way, I went inside, took my coat off. It was cold outside. Started doing some lab work. I looked at the Petri dishes from yesterday, put some things under a microscope, collected my data, recorded it, blah, blah, blah. It's an anecdote. It's a story of what someone did. The thing is that it's a collected, systematic, logical use of them. But it is still anecdote. We are still reporting on what we did. Is it not an anecdote if Galileo says, I turned my telescope to this place in the sky and saw these stars around Jupiter, I think it was. Then the next night, I turned my telescope to the same place in the sky and saw different stars around Jupiter. And then so on and so forth. And he records his anecdotes. It is a collection of anecdotes, nothing more. In other words, it is an observation of reality. If science ain't about observation, it ain't about anecdote. Anecdote is telling about your observations and doing it in a logical, systematic way. So some people think science versus anecdote. They need to learn what science is because it ain't fundamentally different than anecdotes. It is a recordum. What did Galileo do? Well, he goes through this long story. One day, I got this pendulum made out of this and this, and I had it this long, and I let it go back and forth, and I recorded how much time it took with this little water clock I had. It was so cool. I made up this water clock. I was using my heartbeat before or singing to get the time. Now I'm using my little water clock and I measure how much it is. Anecdote. Or, and he says, and then I did the same thing, but I changed the length to 5 meters instead of 4. And this is what it did to the period. Or one day I decided to be cool to like have a pendulum swing halfway and hit a board, and I dropped this little rock at the same time. Blah, 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 blah. A little story he could tell his kids around Christmas or something, maybe. Anecdote. It's a reported systematic use of anecdote. So some people who think you can dismiss anecdote are wrong. Or as Baron Heinrich said, to paraphrase, I'll put the quote up there, those who reject all anecdote also reject truth. Amen.